unknowingly, I feel like BIBAK Los Angeles at least held some sort of like extra familial um, community or another community for people to go to. Um, and like that's something that we are trying to continue to do. But it's like, we as BIBAK Los Angeles, it's our board is now consists of my generation, and I'm like the younger of the generation, but it's all because we're just trying to keep something for our kids to look forward to.
Right.
Outside of COVID, we were getting the momentum going to try to start, planning at least park gatherings, and we started the year off great with a start of the year like holiday party, which is something that I think everyone, we're all used to, like the BIBAC. Um, I don't know, like speaking as a member of BIBAC Los Angeles, I don't know how really like what the why they formed, and I feel like it's just because they wanted to get together. I feel like BIBAC Los Angeles was formed back in 1960 by families that were trying to help other Igorot families start and assimilate to the U.S. lifestyle. And I'm sure that that's how it was over there, because you just try to be like, oh, are you Igorot too? Like, doesn't matter what tribe you're from, doesn't matter what
Yeah.
family you're from. It was kind of like, we're here to help you
Different
type
then.
of thing.
Mm.
And it was very much like, oh yeah, we can help you get jobs, this and this and this. And then when I think growing up, in the 90s and stuff like that, I think for me, BIBAC Los Angeles was already well established and well into their prime. So, um, but I was able to witness a lot of, like, the Igorot Quarterly. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah, we used to
Gerald.
receive it all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my
Mm.
parents, like, it was something that, pre-Facebook and everything, it was just a way to keep all, like, and so that's why I feel like I was fortunate enough to already know that there are Igorots all around the world, because they would list all the BIBAC
Mm.
organizations that existed. So I already knew, like, okay, there's Igorots, like, in Spain and Canada and in Australia. And so I feel like I was just fortunate, just I was born at the right time in the right place, kind of thing, to be able to see the peak, but then also be part of, like, the decline in terms of just how people have evolved. And so we're here just to kind of pick everything, back up and push back towards, we're working towards, hopefully we already applied, I think, back in February for
Yeah.
nonprofit status to try to work with the Phil Am community here, and then also just try to, I know it's not going to be the same exact thing that we had, but enough for our kids, like, to just teach our kids our culture the way that we learned it, because now it's really, on us, type of thing. And so that was something, like, I got so used to, like, leading practices and doing these. But when we had our performance, when we had to teach our little kids, like, an actual dance, like, they've come to our practices when we've practiced for our own performances, and
Mm.
they've always just been in the background. But then finally we said, okay, guys, you're gonna do it now. And so that was something that I didn't think that, I ever saw us doing. But it was great to hear some of the kids say, like, are we going to have practice again? And so, they, of course, they had to get over their first performance jitters. And when they finally performed, they were wanting to do it again, which was, like, awesome.
Right.
And so, that's just that little moment, even if it's like, for we can't get back everything that we had. Like, I mean, BIBAC Los Angeles was, like, in numbers. Like, I'm sure we were a huge, big community, but, I think that as long
Can
as we
you
just get
estimate?
how
Oh, I'm
many?
sorry.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah, how many groups because I know this is very common for a lot of our organizations. How many splinter groups arose out of the multiple splits of BBAC of LA? Could you estimate?
Well, see, and I think if I were to ask, like, the different leaders of the different groups, it's, some people who quote unquote broke off didn't mean to break off. They wanted to, I think the first we had were like Kana and which is a
The Kalinga
Kalinga
group. Yeah.
Association of Northern America, because, people, all people from Kalinga. And so I think it was more of and then Benguet 13 is another group. The Benguet 13 is one of the ones that is operating here in Southern California. And I know that our the founder, Uncle Nover Velasco, it wasn't intended to be a split. It was, yeah, I think splinter is more of the thing, or under the umbrella of BIBAK Los Angeles, you have your
Mm-hmm.
Benguet group, because just not everybody wants to intermingle with everybody. They want to, and so you have your Benguet group. I do know that there's an Ifugao Association in California. I don't think that came from BIBAK Los Angeles, but I know Benguet 13 did. And then outside of that, other people just formed other organizations outside. I think, maybe, I don't, maybe through politics or what not. Different groups have come and gone. Some of them are very specific to just, there's another group, Gagayamers, who are just specific to, I think, Pingad and maybe Sabangan, those very specific municipalities in Mountain Province. And then there was a group called the United Cordillerans of Los Angeles, but they kind of like came and went. Like, I don't know, all of a sudden they were doing stuff and then they're, gone. So I feel like there were, and then the biggest one is COE, the Cordillera Organization of the Inland Empire. But the Inland Empire, if you look at it versus LA County, it's like two very large counties, very separate from each other. It's like talking about Benguet and Mountain Province type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
geographically, that would be about the same size.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Like Orange County?
Kinda, yeah, pretty much. But then see, like, Benguet 13 encompasses all those. And BIBAK, at the time, BIBAK Los Angeles encompassed very, like, counties that were the entire, everywhere from here all the way down to San Diego, because then you have BIBAK San Diego down there. And back then it was probably different because people commuted further in lesser time. And people didn't mind to drive, and things were, very different. And so right now, I feel like BIBAK Los Angeles is like holding on to a lot of the generations like us that grew up with it, and we know BIBAK Los Angeles as we do, and so just gonna kind of like take whoever, everybody's invited type of thing, as it always was, kind of, to not infringe upon the other organizations either.
So it sounds also like some of that splitting came because, sometimes this is very true with Filipino organizations. When it gets too big, about 400 people, that's where you start seeing the fissures becoming very apparent.
Yeah, and I exactly. I think it's a lot of people that didn't want to drive anymore, a lot of people that this and this, and of course people don't, I'm sure it was just a lot of like maybe some personal, some this and that, and some people just like kind of moved on, and so there are a lot of people who have like expressed a lot of nostalgia that they when they like look and talk about. We kind of got a lot of support in terms of there is an ongoing, but except for this year, the Igorot athletic meet, and that involves BIBAKs from BIBAK Arizona, Las Vegas, San Diego, the COE group, which is the Inland Empire, Cordillera Organization of the Inland Empire, and Benguet 13. So those two are still Southern California based, but two separate groups. And then once we started to form BIBAK Los Angeles, we got an invitation. And it's kind of like an acknowledgement of our organization, because the reputation of BIBAK Los Angeles was that we were dead. And
for how many years was that? Considered dead,
I think no more than 10. But at the same time, the BIBAK Dance Ensemble, we were always performing. Like, we were always still getting together and doing, like, in those 10 years. I think, it's kind of like the whole video killed the radio star. Was the, the Igorot Quarterly was not needed anymore. And the internet, all those things.
Email took over.
And so a lot of the things that were centralized in Los Angeles kind of went away. And then a lot of my generation, everybody went to college and, and moved on with school. And so there were still some gatherings. I mean, I feel like there was still just not like the fundraisers and not like the common continual gatherings. There were still like one or two. I don't think it was ever completely dead. I think it was just always like always there, but like personally, like, of course, like some people will say like, no, we were never dead, and I would probably agree that we were never really dead, but but in terms of like losing the nonprofit status, that is something that we have, like that's what we're trying to reapply for.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always, participated in things culturally as BIBAK Los Angeles. And so, and that's, like for the past 10, 20, almost, 20 years, I've been like performing with BIBAK Dance Ensemble. More than that now. But yeah, it's a lot of politics and personal stuff that I don't even want to know, but it's also important to know in terms of revamping and reorganizing and to try to avoid that. And so that was something that was like in agreement with the current officers now. It's like, if anybody has any sort of disagreements, like we, are an open, we're open to hearing everybody out. That's like the main thing because, but yeah. And so, but anyway, but going back to that Igorot athletic meet that happened last year, 2019, that was the first time I think we kind of emerged as an organization, with other organizations, and so we got actually a lot of support from their fellow, from our fellow groups and organizations, because they're just like, oh yeah, we're just happy that you guys are, back together. But at the same time, when Christmas time comes around, they say, okay, so everybody's having their Christmas weekend, so which one's yours? And so it's a lot of social, it's a lot of political, and it's cultural. It's I think that's what we all grew up knowing. We grew up mostly knowing only the cultural aspects, but you grow up even more, and then you find out everything else that comes along with organizing like so many people together.
Right. I mean, it's a challenge. It's a challenge when you're organizing groups that historically and traditionally sometimes didn't get along with.
Right.
And
exactly.
then you're coming to like the States, and in the beginning it worked out because numbers were smaller and there was necessity to just put whatever those things are, those I don't know, whatever those issues are away, just so that you can have a sense of community.
Exactly.
And so you can be with other fellow Igorots, whether they be from Benguet, Ifugao, Kalinga, Payo, Mountain Province, or whatever municipality you're from in a certain area. And it's tough to organize something like that. So I get it that, and we talked about this actually in the last podcast, something very, very similar, that like, as it grows, it's just natural that, especially when there's more people from a certain area within the group, that they'll want to just, like you said, kind of do their own thing. And then, when it's time to gather as one big unit, they'll come for the special occasions. But for the most part, most folks want to just do their own thing. And there's positives and negatives to that. There's positives in the sense that like they can delve deeper into their specific culture, and but sometimes the negatives is the exposure for the younger ones who, like in your time, you were exposed to like all the different cultures and the different dances, and you learn from everybody. And that's just like Jay and I, and I guess you too, right? Yeah,
right.
And in Canada it was like that too, right? Yeah. And sorry, sometimes I talk like he's I'm like pointing at him because he's whatever.
But like, but the square might be in a different place. So
it's actually over here, right? But I'm pointing, and he can't see that. Sorry, this is the thing about being on video versus talking to people in real life.
That's true.
Sorry, man.
No, it's
But like,
true.
yeah, it's just I find it really interesting because as the negative part, not well, yeah, the con would be that like younger folks won't be able to experience and learn from
Oh
the other
yeah.
cultures.
Yeah, I think that's
And
my
I
biggest
guess
gripe is the younger people wanting to and trying to learn. It's a little bit more difficult.
Hmm.
when everything's splintered, right?
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
especially now when people are really well. Again, it's really frustrating over here because everybody is really broken up, and
Oh.
not a lot of people, or depending on, let's say, depending on the leadership, different groups show up within
Oh, I'm
BIBAK, right?
sure. Hmm.
So
Whoever's
it's
president at the time. You mean?
that kind of thing. So it's just, yeah, I don't know. I just wish everybody would come. At least
I
for,
know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
kind of hit the head on the nail, Mark, because it's like the w- our groups were formed out of necessity,
Mm-hmm.
and numbers
Yeah.
were smaller back then, and now
Yeah.
a lot of the like we have this necessity now, but we're in like a different. It's hard because it's like we are also all like a mixture of our late 30s 40s, and so but we're still
Wow.
like kids in our bebop oh yeah, we have bebop trailblazers, which was actually the bebop seniors group, which was a part of bebop Los Angeles, but now bebop trailblazers operates on their own. Like they're the originators of bebop Los Angeles, but they are now still bebop trailblazers because they're the senior group. And interestingly enough, they're the ones, they were formed because uh
That's interesting.
it was the Deaf Assistance Program. Uncle Rex
Yeah, yeah.
Botengan, started that. I don't know if that's something that all the other
That's what
bebops
we created that
have.
too in Northern
Oh yeah.
California. Barrier
So
Lake
so
Yeah.
program.
that's what
Mhm.
Barrier Lake program.
that's
Yeah.
what the Bebop Trailblazers is. So in addition to being keeping track of all the members to help, like, okay, this person passed away, please help you give your contribution.
Right.
They still will do their, normally it's a yearly social, like it's always a holiday, but they have their still at least one big social event, and then they operate as as the death assistance program, but they still like will socialize together. So it's like it came from a necessity, then you just socialize with whoever you want to socialize in these different groups, but then they left all of us used to this one big unified group, and then now it's like very different. And so I feel like we all have a different necessity, and that necessity is to be able to like recreate or that sense of community for our kids,
And,
um
and
I
acknowledging
think.
that it will be different just simply
Mhm.
because of the different contexts.
Yeah.
That I think that the reimagining, revisioning of that is quite important because it is different.